welcome everybody here to our 9 o'clock service at Washington Heights. So glad that you joined us today. And we say this every week, what I'm about to say, because we mean it. And if this applies to you, I hope you'll take us up on it. We're so glad you're here if it's your first day, and we would like this big room and this crowd to feel more like family really soon. And one way to do that, one step in that direction, is what we call our meet and greet area, and it's right off the platform here, and my wife and I will be there after the service. We would love to say hi to you and hear a little bit about how you wound up here and just to get to know you on a first name basis. Promise won't keep you long, but truly our honor and our privilege to meet you there. So we are in a series in the book of Proverbs that we've entitled Learning Curve. And there are so many different themes that are addressed there. And today, as you can see, we are going to address the whole issue of anger, of our temper. Anybody ever lost their temper? You ever had that? Thank you for those hands going up so quickly there. I came across a video of somebody who I think set it up and thought, let me take a video of me hitting the perfect drive down the fairway. And this is what happened instead. Check this out. Yeah, so losing your temper, we're kind of doing a play on words on that, right? We all know what it's like to lose our temper, but what would it actually be like to lose some of that temper, meaning to put it away, to redeem it, to transform it, to see it changed? And that has been my prayer as we look at this today, that we would experience some wholeness and some healing in this area that we can all relate to in one way or another. Let me start with some stats here. The average man loses his temper. Can you guess how many times a week? Turn to somebody around you. Take a guess at how many times that is. 30, I heard down here. No, it's actually 6 times. The average woman loses her temper. Take a guess. How many times? How many times? 300. No, it's not 300. A couple weeks ago with words, the men got to say, Well, today, ladies, it's your turn because the average woman only loses her temper 3 times a week. Hold your applause until the end, ladies, okay? Because we ain't done yet, all right? So hang on. So when we talk about this in our homes, and a lot of times the most common place we lose our temper is in our homes, the most dangerous room in your house during a temper tantrum is, take a guess, is, you guys got that right away. It's the kitchen. It's all those knives and sharp objects in there, right? So what are we supposed to do about this? We all know that it happens, and we all know that it's part of our own journey. Well, here's what the Bible says about it. It's one of the more common themes in the book of Proverbs is about our anger. It's about our temper, and it's about understanding the dangers of it. It's also about getting to the source of it, because anger in and of itself is not the issue. There's something lurking beneath the surface of that. And then it also in Proverbs talks about how we can redeem it and transform it. Couple ways of introduction here. Proverbs 16:32. Better to be slow to anger than a mighty warrior, and the one who controls his temper is better than the one who captures a city. Now we might say, well, that's really metaphorical there, but there's actually a literal version of that. Alexander the Great, one of the greatest generals and conquerors the world has ever seen, one day in a fit of rage struck his favorite general and killed him. And on the other side of that, he says, I have conquered the world, but I cannot conquer my own soul. And I think some of us know what he was talking about. Maybe not on that kind of a scale, but we can relate. Proverbs 29:22, a person with a quick temper stirs up arguments and commits a lot of sins. Right? Anybody agree with that? There are some things we do when we are angry we would never do when we are feeling something different. Proverbs 14:29, it is smart to be patient, but it is stupid to lose your temper. When you lose your temper, you always lose something or someone. And so we're going to take a look at the dangers that Proverbs talks about, the source, getting to the bottom of it, and then also a way to heal from our anger. So first, let's talk about understanding the dangers of anger. We're going to move pretty quickly in this because I think there's not a lot of convincing that needs to happen here. I think we already understand this on some level. But here's what we need to understand when it comes to the dangers. My body keeps the score. A tranquil heart is life to the body, but passion, and here passion is not, the expression of love here. It's talking about fury. It's talking about an intensity that comes along with anger. But passion is rottenness to the bones. And do you see how the Bible, this is 3,000 years ago, connects our emotions to what's happening inside of our physical bodies? And psychology has caught up to this in more recent times here where, stress has an impact on your body. Anxiety has an impact on your body. Anger has an impact on your body. Anger is the most common emotion that causes heart disease and heart attacks. And so long ago, the Bible talked about things that we are better understanding in our day, but there's a connection between our emotions and our bodies. A cheerful heart, by contrast, is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. And so our emotions have an impact on who we are and our bodies. Also, we need to understand this, that anger damages my relationships. And again, I don't think it takes a lot of convincing here. A hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel. And my guess is that we know this, that even in those moments when one person is angry, have you noticed that it becomes contagious? Right? Somebody amps up and I'm going to amp up in response, and it just creates this scenario in which everybody winds up moving in that direction. And often anger just fuels conflict and separation in relationships. It also diminishes my wisdom. A quick-tempered person does foolish things. Anybody give an illustration of that verse in their own life? And the one who devises evil schemes is hated. And, I came across one other video here of somebody who is throwing something, and watch what happens in this. And I think as our anger goes out, this is kind of a picture, a metaphor of what anger does. We think it's all going in that direction, but you know what? It tends to bounce back in one way or another. Check out this video. Yeah. That's how anger works right there. We think, I'm just getting it out and I'm putting it on you, and it comes back and it bites me. And so there are all kinds of dangers that come along with anger, and it'd be important for us to remember that. It also doesn't change me. See, sometimes we think that becoming angry and especially getting it out is somehow going to make things better, but it does not change me. A hot-tempered person must pay the penalty. Rescue them, and you will have to do it again and again and again and again. So in other words, it doesn't change anything. And it certainly will not make anything better, me included or the situation included. Anger is the emotion that most mimics addictive substances in our lives. That it is something that eventually leads to a form of denial. I think with so many of our emotions, we're comfortable or at least okay in admitting them. I'm a little anxious to fly, or I've been down a little bit lately because of this, that, and the other thing. But I think anger is the one that causes us to hide. I'm not angry. I'm just sticking up for myself. I'm not angry. Somebody had to say it. I'm not angry. They had it coming. And so often anger leads to denial, and yet it fuels something in the heart of humanity that ultimately leads us in the direction where it almost becomes addictive, because just like a substance where we need more and more and more of it, that as time goes on, the anger needs to escalate and become stronger and greater as time goes on. We need to become even more angry. about whatever that might be. So we talked about the dangers of anger, but before we go too far, I also want to make sure that we understand that the Bible actually portrays that there is a positive version of anger. When you see Jesus here, he got angry. He got angry at some religious leaders who were loading down people with rules that they weren't keeping and that were impossible for anybody to keep, and they were holding back the grace and love of God on the other side of performance. You see Jesus going into a temple, turning over tables. Jesus got angry. It is even part of the nature of God that there is a God who has anger. What does God get angry at? Things that are unjust. Things that hurt people, times and ways in which people take advantage of another. And so there is this aspect of anger that is right and good, and it's for all the right reasons when it is undoing injustices, when it is protecting the strong, protecting the weak from being taken advantage of. And so why do we have so many negative experiences with it? Because that God-given emotion, and by the way, God's dream is not that we would become just an emotionless, bunch of people who are kind of like Spock on Star Trek, where we are just all logical and don't feel anything. In fact, if you never get angry, you know what? That's actually a sign that you don't care about much of anything. Because the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference. It's not caring about anything. But then why does our anger take that detour and move in those directions that cause all these dangers and all these negative ways in which it flows out? And the reason for that is because we're not using it in the direction for which God gave it. We're not using it to protect, and undo injustices, to protect those who are vulnerable and being taken advantage of. A lot of times, what we're using it for? Ourselves. That my anger is to protect me and my ego and my reputation and what people think about me. And that's the reason that we wind up with so many of those negative versions of it, so many of those dangers that spring out of it. And maybe that leads us into the next point, because if we understand the dangers of it, we need to identify the source of anger. What is happening beneath the surface? And I think a great question when we are angry, and sometimes maybe we can manage to think about this, maybe sometimes we can't, but I wonder if we can get more in the habit of asking ourselves when we're angry, why am I angry? And there are different levels to anger. There are different things that get our temper out of control. One is just daily frustrations. Have you noticed that the world is broken? I don't know about you, I can be in a checkout line, or I'm moving up toward the checkout lines, and I'm kind of gauging, okay, which one is going to be the fastest, right? And so I get in one, and inevitably I get the world's slowest checkout person. Or have you ever gotten in the 10 items or less lane, and then it's taken a while, and then you're counting the items in somebody's basket there, and they have 11. And this is like, a corporal offense here of somebody taking advantage of all of that. They're just daily frustrations, at times in which traffic may be backed up. And here's what Proverbs says about this. Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end. So in other words, if you want to be foolish, according to Proverbs, whenever you get frustrated, just let it all out. If you're old enough to remember this song, it took place, I think, in the 80s. It was by a group called Tears for Fears, and the song went something like this. Shout, shout, anybody know? My people are here, yeah. Let it all out. These are the things I can do without. Right? And the mindset for so long was, if we can just get it out of here, it's going to be better here and for everyone. And you know what's happened since that time? Is that psychology has moved in the direction that the Bible has always been, and it tells us, no, don't just vent it, because that causes all kinds of pain. Instead, learn to control it. And so when you get angry, one of the best things that we can do is not give full vent, but maybe is take some time. You ever heard this saying? It's kind of an old saying. When you get angry, count to 10. That actually came from Thomas Jefferson, who back in the day said, when you get angry, count to 10, and if you're still angry, count to 100. And the principle is there, right? You got to take some time, and when you take some time, it is going to diminish the amount of emotion that we feel along with it. So reflect before you react. And here's the thing, and my guess is you don't like to hear this because I don't like to hear it when I get angry, but here's the reality, because it's so easy to say, man, he makes me so angry, she makes me so angry, that makes me so angry. You know what the Bible tells us in the book of Proverbs, says this over and over again? Anger is a choice. Anger is something over which I have a measure of control. And when it happens, the first place I need to look to is me and not to you, because my anger is mine and your anger is yours. So on another level, a deeper level, the source of our anger can be some longer term hurts, some wounds that we've had. And we talked a couple weeks ago about how our words can sometimes be used as weapons. We can, swing them around like a sword and stab somebody. And if we pull it back and go, I didn't really mean that. I was just being sarcastic or whatever. There can still be a wound on the other side of that. And there are many wounds that do not just heal up in a short amount of time. And so they continue to bleed. And it could be out of woundedness that we strike out and lash out in anger. And maybe it's a situation over here, but the wound happened a long time ago. You ever heard the expression, let sleeping dogs lie? And I just heard this story about a dog that was abused and then one day just lashed out at the person who had adopted this dog. And so here was this present tense situation, but that wound had taken place a while ago and had been left there. And I wonder how many of us are walking around with wounds that are still bleeding, happened a long time ago, but all of a sudden we get into a present tense situation and our anger shows up in all kinds of ways. A person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. And in the Bible, it talks about how when there is an offense that comes at us, there are a lot of opportunities and decisions that we can make about that. One is we can respond in time. One is we can take matters into our own hands and try to even out the score and make sure they know what they did. And here's another option available to us, to simply overlook an offense. But when we are living with some of those wounds that have not healed, not only is it going to be a challenge in that part, but also in the daily frustrations, some of those things that just happen because our world is broken and far from perfect, is we're going to experience even more anger in those low-level kind of things because we experience it at this deeper level. And one of the marks of maturity is that there are times and ways in which we just let some stuff roll off because it's an offense, but you know what? It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. And then there's a deeper level, and that is anger against God. And in this, I'm talking specifically to some folks who are in a relationship with God, but in a broader sense, if you're here today and you go, well, I don't even, believe there is a God. This is a sense in which we have this idealistic view of the world and something or someone is just not dealing the right way with us. And so we have this ongoing sense that everything is aligned against me. I'm not getting what I should be getting. And so we kind of rage. And whether it's specifically God because we have certain expectations of him, or we're not even there yet faith-wise, and we're just thinking, well, the universe or something owes me more than I am getting. This would be maybe the deepest level of that. A person's own folly leads to their ruin, yet their heart rages against the Lord. Right? Sometimes we do dumb things and we go, God, why didn't you stop that? And God, why didn't you keep me from saying those words that were so hurtful to somebody else? And we put these expectations on God. And if we're living in this level where we just have this default setting that God or the universe or whatever it is that we might be holding on to owes us more than we are getting, it's going to be hard to overlook anything. It's going to be hard to heal up those wounds because we'll see each and every one of them as something that should never have happened to us. And on the level of frustration, it's going to be really challenging for us to deal with the things that just come up every day. So here's a principle that comes along with this. When you stop hurting, you stop hurting others with your anger. And so when we see anger, it is never the problem because there's something beneath that, and it certainly is never the solution. And so when anger comes up, let it be kind of a warning light in our lives. And maybe there's an opportunity for us to think in that moment and ask ourselves, why am I angry? Why am I angry? I can remember years back when my kids were still in school. They're not grown and out of the house. But I was dropping them off at school and then coming in for a staff meeting, which happens at 8:30 in the morning. And if you know anything about me, I hate being late. And I hate when others are late as well. And so I can remember dropping them off, and as you pull into school, there were all these cars that were backed up there, and I'm like, move it along. I got to get to staff meeting, and we got to talk about loving God because you're in my way right now. And so it took a long time to get up there, and then you pull out of there, and then there's some construction going on, and then there was a light, and somebody didn't go right away when it turns green. It's not going to get any greener, buddy. Let's go. It's the pedal on the right. Push it. Let's go. And inside, I'm just churning and getting madder and madder and madder about all that stuff. And in those moments, what if we stopped and just said, why am I angry? And here's what I believe was happening in that moment is, you know what I was angry about? You know what I was raging about? You know what I was defending in that moment? My reputation and myself. And what people would think me, oh yeah, sure, we got to be on time, and here he is late. And I wonder if there is a way in which we can reflect in those moments to ask ourselves why that anger is there. And that leads us maybe to where we all need to spend probably the most of our time. How do I heal my anger? How does it get transformed? The first thing, and we've already talked a little bit about this, is to simply admit it, to own it. Nothing and no one makes me mad. That's my anger. And there may be real life situations, but anger is not the problem, and anger is certainly not the solution. Pastor and author Tony Evans said this. He goes, when someone spits on you, they didn't make you angry. They made you wet, but they didn't make you angry. And so in those moments, may we have the courage to admit it, to own it, and recognize that it's our own. The wise in his heart accepts commands, in other words, instruction, but a chattering fool comes to ruin. Are we open to input during those times when anger is being discussed and maybe somebody's telling me what it's like to live on the other side of me? Am I honest enough and willing enough, open enough to hear it and to receive it? How do I heal my anger? You delay it. And we already talked about this, right? Don't just give full vent in that moment. Delay it. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. And if you're angry, have you ever discovered this lesson? When you're angry, don't text. When you're angry, don't leave a message. When you're angry, don't write an email. There is a psychologist, his name is John Gottman. And he has done some research around this whole arena, and he came up with this word that he called flooded. And maybe you've experienced the emotion when you truly get angry. There are hormones that are released. There's adrenaline that's pumping. Your heart beats faster. You get flushed, right? There's even this physical response that goes on. And he did some studies, some research around this, and he discovered when we're flooded, when it is flowing like that, we cannot learn anything and we cannot process anything. That part of our brain shuts down. It's kind of this fight or flight, and in that moment, probably with anger, we want to fight, but our thinking part of our brain has shut down. And so his encouragement to people is when you're flooded, just walk away, not forever. It's not an excuse not to deal with things, but it's an opportunity to maybe take a walk or to say, you know what, not here, not right now, but let's talk about this soon and let's get back to it. And in reality, many times when anger has not been learned to be controlled and it's not delayed, what we often do is we wind up fighting battles charged by anger that are just not worth it. And some of those daily frustration things take on a level that is so much deeper because we have not delayed and done away with it. I saw this cartoon. I thought this was kind of funny here. Husband and wife, for the last 29 years, all you've done is find mistakes in anything I say. 30 years. You know, there's some things, who cares, right? Just let it roll. Let it roll. But if we're trying to heal our anger, we got to learn that sometimes there are things that are just not worth it. So let it roll. Also, what we can do to heal our anger is reflect on it, to think about it, maybe to study it, to analyze it within ourselves. The intelligent person restrains his words, and the one who keeps a cool head is a man of understanding. So in other words, what Proverbs is telling us is that when I have more understanding about my own dynamics and the things that are happening around me, I will be more understanding of the situations in which I find myself. And so often when anger is the emotion that we feel, we're not thinking or caring a whole lot about the person who's on the other side of that. But could it be that somebody there is going through something that I don't even understand? But the more understanding I bring to myself and my own dynamics, the more understanding I am of someone else. Do not say, I'll do to them as they have done to me. I'll pay them back for what they did. So that's another way to reflect on it. And this is from Proverbs 24:29. And do you see those quotes in that verse there? Who is that person talking to? And the answer is, he is talking to himself. So this is some self-talk that's going on here. And isn't it interesting how we can have this dialogue inside of our own hearts and minds that sometimes is an accurate reflection of what just happened, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes somebody does something or says something, and what's the talk that goes on the other side of that? I knew it. They don't respect me. I knew it. That they're thinking all kinds of things about me that are so off. I knew it. They don't like me. And we have this self-talk that goes on inside of ourselves. And many times we are defending not what is right and good and those who are vulnerable. I'm protecting me. And the self-talk can often lead us in that direction because we turn something that's about something and we turn it in the direction of our own insecurities or weaknesses. And that can just fuel the anger that we feel in that moment. Well, we can also transform our anger. We can transform it, we can change it. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Have you ever noticed that when somebody is angry, a lot of times the volume just climbs? So if you turn down the volume, you can often turn down the anger. And anger becomes, as we said already, becomes contagious a lot of the time. And one person gets it, and it's like it just makes its way around the room. And all of us have the opportunity to take it in a different direction. But will we, in that moment, do more than just respond with what's happening inside of our own hearts and souls? So we can transform it. If your enemy is hungry, give him food to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. And so here, the Bible tells us, and there are a lot of religions the world over who will say, yeah, we got something just like that. You know what? Do good to others. But here's what the Bible is saying that goes way beyond this. This isn't just, hey, do good things. This is actually redeem your enemy. Restore your enemy. Don't just even forgive them. But on the other side of that, there is even more that can take place in a relational context where you walk with them and you walk alongside them and you actually redeem them. And isn't that what Jesus did for us? I mean, earlier in the service, we took communion, right? The bread represents his body that was broken for us. And the cup represents, the juice in the cup represents his blood that was shed for us as he was beaten and tortured on our behalf. And what Jesus did on the cross, you think about how it relates even to the whole issue of anger. That Jesus withstood the anger of us, of the people who were there, spitting on him, jeering him, mocking him, and also taking upon himself the righteous wrath of God against sin and all the wrong things that it produces in us and in our world and in our relationships. And he took all of that upon himself. And in that moment, he did that not just as an example. He did that for you. And he did that for me. And the only reason that we can be in a relationship with him today is because he did that and absorbed a lot of that anger that was given in his direction. The Bible says while we were still sinners, we were shaking our fist in his face, he died for us. That's what he did for you and me. And on the other side of that, as we walk with him, what would it be like for people like us to maybe live and manifest some of that and to experience more of what is on the other side of that? See, I think we all have an opportunity to be filled with something. And in this world, you know what the world is going to do? Right? It's frustrating. You get hurt in this world, and sometimes we just don't understand the bigger picture. And we can be filled with that over and over and over again, and this world is going to jostle us. But as we journey together with God and as we walk with him, and we've said this a couple times already in Proverbs, wisdom is called a path, and a path is something that you walk day by day and you take one step at a time. And as you do that, you grow in wisdom and you grow in proximity to God, and you experience more of what he's working in, and we get to work it out in the lives we live. What would it be like if we filled ourselves with what is called the fruit of the Spirit in the New Testament? Fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance or patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Could anybody use a little more of that as they journey through this broken world? And maybe by way of just a real simple illustration. So I've got this water bottle up here, and it's filled. And if I jostle this water bottle, what is going to come out of it? Right? And the answer is what comes out is what is inside. And if this is a picture of you and me, when this world jostles us, if we just get filled up with the frustrations, we let the wounds, go untended, and we just rage against the bigger picture of what we feel that we are owed, what's going to come out is what is inside. But we have a different opportunity to be filled with something different than that, to be filled with the fruit of the Spirit. And this world will jostle us. But what if when that happens, what comes out are those attributes right there? Because that's what God longs to work into my heart and soul and into yours. And we think of that, at a high level, and we go, yeah, that sounds really great, but what does that actually look like? Can I give you one picture of that I came across personally? This picture was taken in the country of Nepal a couple years ago. And that gentleman standing next to me there, his name is Samson, and he's a pastor in Nepal. And in that country, there are gangs of roaming people that look for people like him. And he has multiple times been beat up in the streets, like to the ground, kicked, punched, and spit on, just for doing what he does, doing what I'm doing right now. And I was alone with Samson. We were eating a meal together, and I asked him, I said, Samson, as he was relating these stories to me, and I'm thinking, I just can't even understand that. And I said, Samson, how do you process that? How do you deal with that? And if you remember that image just a couple minutes ago, he said, I remember what Jesus did for me on the cross. And it changes everything. And there is an opportunity for us to do something different when this world jostles us. And it will. And we're going to be filled with something. But here's, the question, and I think the good news is that the answer, is something that we all have within our control. What fills me up? Am I going to let all that stuff just have its effect on me? The frustrations of a broken world, some of the wounds we're walking around with, some of the, why is it not going the way I think it should? Or will we be filled up with what God is working into our hearts and souls? What fills me up, and here's the good news, choice is mine. The choice is yours. And what's on the other side of that can determine so much in a broken world like ours, but a God who is greater, and a God who is stronger, and a God who longs to transform human hearts. Would you pray together with me? So, Lord Jesus, thank you for who you are and for all that you've accomplished on our behalf. Thank you for your love that you made visible in such a stark way, taking all of the anger upon yourself, but redeeming it and restoring so many lives. And so, God, may our hope be in you, and in this broken world of ours, God, may just even our reactions, our responses, and our reflections in those moments, may they show the hope and the trust and the walk, the path that we follow together with you. And so, God, lead us in a direction that all the more just shows your power at work in hearts and lives like ours. And thank you for your grace along the way. Thank you for your patience with us. And God, as we're on a learning curve with a lot of things, God, just redeem and restore these hearts of ours. May they reflect you more and more. And so we ask and we pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.